Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff. You're watching the Schwa Mill, where we help you craft your accent at this time every single Saturday. For the next hour and a half, I have you as we take a look at pronunciation files that you send us and give some thoughts so that way we can help you achieve a more natural sound as best as possible. I do want to just share some quick hellos before we get into things. Hello to Shoke checking in, letting us know about some consonant sounds. By the way, there is a poll going on, which you can see at the top of the chat, asking you what consonant sounds you find to be the most difficult. In the lead right now is the TH sounds, the voiced and voiceless versions. I'm guessing. If you could let me know which one you find more difficult, voiced or voiceless. I guess it's voiced, especially like at the end of a word. But you can let us know. Second place is the R sound. And if there's another consonant that gets in the way, you can also let us know that as well, as Shoke did. Hello also to Edward checking in. Good to see you. Emmanuel's here. Good to see you again, Emmanuel. And ooh, I see some other consonants coming in. So R and L combinations, TH, voiced or voiceless, both of them. Consonant clusters, the NTHS. Ooh, that's a horrible one. As long as you're able to keep we can talk about some techniques. I see Junji is here. L is hard, especially the dark L sound. We spend a lot of time talking about that in our classes. A lot of time. Certain cases, the TH sound as well. Cool. But today, I'm not going to be the only one giving you feedback. In fact, we have a special guest, which you may have seen. So let's give a moment just to introduce her.
Ciao, hola, hello. I'm Mary L from Mary L Accent Coaching. And in this video, I'm going to show you something that will give your speech more rhythm. Stay relaxed. The most common mistake is to have the tongue too low when you say E.
Hi.
Hello.
Guys, this is Mary L, or just Mary, or Maria, perché tu parli italiano, per
Sì.
qualche motivo. That's great. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Mary, if I just give you like 30 seconds, what's your spiel? How would you introduce yourself to everybody here?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Mary. I'm originally from Massachusetts, but I live in Tennessee. And although I was born in the United States, I am crazy about other languages and accents from all over the place. So I've spent most of my life learning languages and learning to get really close native-like accents in them. And today I help others do the same with American English.
So you're kind of like me. I'm originally from the East Coast as well, because I'm from Philadelphia. How do you feel about leaving the East Coast for Midwest, started the South? How's your transition been?
Yeah, it's pretty different between the North and the South over here.
Yeah.
I miss the seafood from Massachusetts, but over here, the cost of living is lower, and it's kind of a more affordable place to live over here.
Now, how do you say car?
Car,
How do you say chowder?
chowder.
Okay, so no Boston. No, we're not doing that. No.
No, I moved when I was very young.
Okay.
So, I heard the accent from my parents a lot, and I went back up to Massachusetts, but I never got the Boston accent.
Got you. So before we dig into some specific pronunciation things, we were talking backstage a little bit, and I thought it might be helpful for people to know why pronunciation. What brought you to teach pronunciation versus all the other aspects of language?
Yeah, so I started out in ESL and I've been teaching English for a long time. But for me, it's a lot more interesting to teach pronunciation because it's something that's not taught a lot in English classes. Like when you take an ESL class from the beginning, there's not a huge focus on the accent. It's mostly like grammar, 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 just talk, 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 but they don't stop to explain all the nuances and the complicated aspects. So I think it's really good to be able to provide help with that so that people can improve that aspect of their speaking, especially because when you have a conversation with someone, if you don't have clear pronunciation, it's going to kind of mess up the quality of the communication. So I think it's important.
Got you. Yeah, kind of very similar to my background too. I was doing ESL, then I became a director at a language center, and there was no pronunciation curriculum at all. So like I basically worked with another instructor. We designed a pronunciation curriculum to be used. I was part of a system that basically they had branches in like every state, and so this was like the first like major pronunciation course that we had. And then also just from my own language learning background, pronunciation often is something that's not taught until you reach an advanced level, and it's like, man, would have been nice to get this stuff earlier a little
Definitely.
bit. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Do you think that they should teach pronunciation like from the beginning?
100%. It's hard now because I have a 4-year-old son.
Mhm.
But one thing I would like to do once I have more time is I would like to learn a new language. And if I were to learn a new language personally, I would probably spend a month just doing pronunciation stuff. Like no vocab, no grammar, just pronunciation, getting the sounds right. Because I think if you can get that system down earlier, then you don't have to unlearn later,
Yeah.
which is part of the difficulty with pronunciation,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I've tried that recently with, Portuguese because
Okay.
I already speak Spanish and Italian, so I have everyone saying, "Okay, next, let's learn Portuguese." And so I said, "Alright, let's do it." And I spent a couple of weeks just kind of dissecting the pronunciation,
Mm,
how the pronunciation of the R, for example, depends on
mhm.
what sounds you have around it. And then I started trying to speak a little bit with friends, and they said, "Wow, you don't have an American accent." And I said, "Because I didn't learn any bad habits."
So again, it shows this is important for people. Like
Yes.
pronunciation, if you're learning a new language, not just English, any language, definitely I would recommend getting that pronunciation as early as possible.
Right, also because it makes you seem even more fluent than you are, like, I'm a
That's
beginner
right.
in Portuguese, but if I have a good accent, then people will kind of overestimate my level as well.
Mhm. Which can also be dangerous because you can put yourself in some crazy situations. Because like, yeah, that's when people are judging fluency, they're not judging your vocab, they're not judging your grammar. A lot of times it's based on how you sound.
Yes.
That's how because people put pronunciation on like this pedestal and
Yeah,
without like realizing it. You know.
definitely.
Um, some other quick questions for you. What do you think is the most difficult sound in American English?
Mm, okay. I think it depends on what a person's native language is, but I would say the R is consistently hard for most people.
That's fair. That's fair. My mom stops
Yeah.
by. Hi, mom. Hello, also to Jassim and everybody checking in. Good to see you guys. I think the R is a good sound. Um, what sound do you think? Do you find that that's also the sound that a lot of students come to you for?
Hmm. Um, I mostly just work with advanced speakers at this point, and
Mhm,
most of the time they have the R down pat already. It's not perfect, but they're not using the R from their native language most of the time.
mm, mhm,
So maybe another one could be TH because even at an advanced level, most people still pronounce it like a D or a T.
mm, mhm. Got you. Got you. And out of all the languages you've learned, which one do you think has been the hardest to get the pronunciation down for?
Hmm. The thing is, I've learned all similar languages, and so
That's true. All those Romance languages, yeah.
they
Although
share like
Portuguese is kind of nasally. I mean, but I think like Spanish and Italian, I think there's a lot more
I agree with
similarity.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so Portuguese, definitely.
Portuguese. Now, have you also traveled to like Portugal and Italy and like Spain or?
I've been to Spain, but I haven't been to Italy and Portugal yet.
Okay.
How
Okay.
about you?
I studied it. I don't know if you can. Hang on. Let me pull this in. I don't know if you can see it. That right there is a map of Perugia, which is
Ah,
where, if you remember the Amanda Knox trial, that's where that happened. I was like 2 blocks. I lived like 2 blocks away from where everything went down, apparently. But yeah, so I was in Perugia. This was tanto tempo fa. Where am I?
We don't have machines that are resourceful enough to know how to make paper clips unless you carefully show them every detail of the process. Like they're not innovators right now. So this is a long way away, if ever.
Mhm. Yeah, I especially like your the last two sentences I like a lot. Part of the reason for that is I think you're doing a great job with pitches in that section. It's a lot more dynamic. Your highs are a little higher and your lows are a little lower. Let me try to find where it started again.
Unless you carefully show them every detail of the process. Like they're not innovators right now.
You can hear that. They're not innovators right now. So you're going up really high on that innovators and the other progression you're doing like innovators right now. So you're going to your high point on innovators and then you're just gradually dragging it down, which is generally the sort of movement you want, kind of moving down after stress words and stress syllables.
Like they're not innovators right now. So this is a long way away.
I like that long way away. So you got kind of three stresses in a row, like long way away. But notice what you're
mm,
doing is each time you're doing that, you're also lowering the pitch a bit. Long way away. So like it's just going down, down, down. So you're not saying long way away. We're adding a lot of dynamic sounds there. Want to play that one more time for the first part.
We don't have machines that are resourceful enough to know how to make paper clips.
Because like this part right here, I think for everything I said about the last two sentences, I feel like this part is kind of lacking. That it's kind of like we're kind of being a little bit repetitive with the pitches and not really extending our range.
We don't have machines that are resourceful enough to know how to make.
We don't have machines that are resourceful enough to know how to make. Maybe one thing we could have done is maybe raise some of the pitches on some of our stressed syllables a little bit higher. Like we don't have machines that are resourceful enough. Like take the high a little higher, but also take the lows a little bit lower for our reductions. Is kind of the first thing that's jumping out to me. Mary, anything that's kind of standing out to you here? Or just kind of quick thoughts to start.
yeah, so, I think it's really good and, like, it's pronounced really well. I don't hear any pronunciation errors that are really popping out. But can you play that part where it says, "They're not innovators right now" one more time?
Hmm.
Like they're not innovators right now.
Okay. So
Did you hear what I heard? Yeah.
yeah, so when he says "now," the pitch is perfect, but it could be a little bit more open, could open the vowel a little bit.
Mhm. Play again.
Like they're not innovators right now.
Right
Mhm.
now. Hmm.
Let's do that now again.
Innovators right now.
No, no. Yeah, it's kind of like no, no versus now, now. It's kind of lacking a little bit of
Right.
breath. Yeah.
Hmm.
The other thing that kind of stands out to me there too is the that short I sound on innovators, a very common thing.
The process. Like they're not innovators.
Innovators, they're not innovators versus they're not innovators, they're not innovators. So you
Hmm.
can always watch out a little bit for those e's versus those short i's. Um, other, I mentioned a lot about pitch and things. I want to take a look at other
We don't have
consonants.
machines that are resourceful enough to know.
Resourceful. Do you hear a z sound? I feel like I'm hearing a z. Play again.
Okay.
We don't have machines that are resourceful enough to.
Resourceful, resourceful versus resourceful, resourceful.
Mhm.
What I say? They're not resource. I personally would say resourceful. But
Yeah, I've heard some native speakers say resourceful as well. Maybe it depends on the
no,
person,
I
the
would definitely put
grammar.
that into like Youglish to kind of see what other people are saying that. Besides that,
Have machines that are resourceful enough to know how to make paper clips.
one of the things that kind of just going back to what I mentioned earlier is again this first sentence is just sounds a little bit flat to me, and I
Mhm.
think one of the reasons for that is you do have a lot of stresses. I'll try to identify your stress words.
We don't have machines that
Machines,
are resourceful enough to
resourceful,
know how to make paper clips.
no, and paper clips. So you got a lot of stresses in a relatively short amount of time, and that's not necessarily a problem. But one of the things that can happen is if you have a lot of stresses, it's like we don't have machines that are resourceful enough to know how to make paper clips. So the one problem that can occur is that when you add more stresses, what that does is it results in a sentence that's a little bit choppier because you're never able to get to the lows because every time you're about to get to your low point, you have to go back up again to kind of raise your pitch. So something I would recommend is again maybe cut down on some of those stresses, um, like we don't have machines that are resourceful enough to know how to make paper clips. Like if you just stress don't and you just stressed paper, that would give you a very different rhythm. We don't have machines that are resourceful enough to know how to make paper clips. We don't have machines that are resourceful enough to make paper clips. And that's just an example. There are other ways you can do it too. And there's nothing wrong with having more stresses, but just kind of be mindful of the more you add, there is that risk that you might sound a little bit flatter. We do have a question here. Trying to produce the R consonant. When I produce R, my tongue tip stays behind my top teeth, almost touching the roof of your mouth. Is this correct for the bunched R? But most videos on YouTube say tongue tip down. So this leads us to a very important question.
Mhm.
Mary, how do you teach people the R sound?
Yeah, so I always say that the tongue tip has to be down because if not, it's going to get way too close to the roof of the mouth, and that causes the pronunciation error of making it into almost a Spanish R, where it touches the roof like this. So you don't want to. I say if you can take it away from that area, it's better to keep it as far away as possible. And even when I speak normally, I don't have the tip of my tongue anywhere near the roof of my mouth. So I think it's better to avoid that region.
I think it is possible to have the tongue high, but you run the risk of really cutting off breath
Hmm.
and also shifting placement. A lot of other languages have placement that is in a higher position. And the more that you use mouth positions that are closer to your first language, the more likely you are to kind of also shift into that first language sound. A lot of languages have an R sound. A lot of languages have like an ah sound or an oo sound and things like that. But if you're using those same mouth positions from your first language, it's much more difficult to shift into the positions that you would use in American English. So, in
Yeah.
general, I would recommend the front end of the tongue down.
Hmm.
Okay. But do be aware it is possible to make it with the tongue high. But if you do that, just make sure that you're getting enough airflow through and you're not shifting. Like if you're doing now my tongue's high, but the problem is I'm really closed off and I'm projecting from like up here. And that is obviously not our goal. Our goal is to get like an sound. Okay. Um, in general with lots of breath passing through. And again, we're projecting from a lower position. So that's really something I would recommend. So I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say the tip is necessarily wrong because I can pronounce like ruh, ruh, ruh. That's with my tongue high, and that's certainly passable. But I can also do ruh, ruh, ruh with the tip of the tongue down too.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, so maybe keeping the tip of your tongue down is just like the safest option.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's true for honestly, my approach is I think the more often you have your tongue higher, the more likely you are to kind of block air. A lot of sounds can be pronounced with the tip of tongue high, but a lot of sounds can also be pronounced with the tip of tongue actually down. So for instance, I did have one student, I don't know if he's here, John. John was asking about what do I mean by different positions of the tongue. So, for instance, when I say tip of the tongue, just let me make myself big a moment to make this a little clear. When I say tip of the tongue, I mean like right here. Okay, that's my tip. When I say like middle of the tongue, like I'm kind of talking about kind of
Hmm.
like that area. And then when I say back of the tongue, I mean kind of right in the area where your tongue almost starts to enter your throat.
Hmm.
So again, the front And if I say just general front of the tongue, I don't mean the tip, but I mean like the front half, from like the middle forward. Okay, so for instance, an N sound you can make with the tip of the tongue high. So you can do like n, n, n. That's what the tip of my tongue pressing up here against my alveolar ridge. But you can also do that with the tip of the tongue against your bottom front tooth and instead press kind of just like the mid front of your tongue up here, like n, n. It's like n, 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 n. And one of the things that you'll notice when you use the tip of the tongue down is the consonant sounds a little bit less clear, but the advantage is you get a little bit more breath through. And it can also be easier to keep the placement lower. And just see another question here. Can you create some additional pronouncing unless you unless you do that, unless you do that, unless you do that. I think personally I would say you can hear both. Personally, I think either. Whatever's easier for you to pronounce. I think whatever is allowing you to keep breath flowing most easily is the one I would go for. Some of it's probably going to be context dependent.
Yeah, that's true for a lot of things. Like when we say don't you, like we don't always say don't you. You can also say don't you. But it depends on like what's comfortable depending on our breath and what comes next, what we said before.
What are you stressing and things like that. Like one thing, we have a series called Say It Native where we look at native speakers talking. And one of the things we saw is that, like, for instance, like need to, sometimes you'll actually pronounce that T, especially if need is getting a pretty heavy stress. So it's not always going to become like Nita. Like you need to go, like something like that. You're probably going to keep the T to add some emphasis.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a listen to our second file. Give me one moment.
I mean, as long as your placement is low and you have enough air coming through, mouth position really doesn't matter if you think about it.
Okay. Anything that's standing out to you? Let me know if you need me to play it again.
The part where he said low, it seemed a little bit too open.
Let's see.
I mean, as long as your placement is low.
Low. Yeah, okay. So it seems like his jaw's dropping quite a bit low, like trying to open it. But it's not that open of a sound. It actually gets a little bit tighter as you go on. So it would be like low, always with the jaw kind of in the same position.
Your placement is low.
Yeah, there's a lot of vowel shifting going on. It's like oh, like oh, and I would say I think it's kind of that middle section.
Placement is low.
Low versus low. Low. Can you hear the difference between, like, let me find that again.
Placement is low.
Low. Do you hear the difference between low and low? Okay. So to me, it almost kind of feels like there's a lot of movement going on, which could be related to what you were talking about.
Yeah, because I mean, you can shift your pitch without necessarily opening more as well.
Changing the vowel sound a lot.
Yeah,
it's almost like breaking.
I think it's good that he has the 2 steps in pitch because that's necessary. Like all of the vowels in American English have that certain length, but that doesn't mean that you have to drop your jaw a lot every time you do it.
So just some thoughts on low there. Other things.
I mean, as long as your placement is low and you have enough air coming through.
Okay, air. Also there.
I was thinking that too. Air is doing kind of a similar thing to low. That's what I was going to say.
I mean, as long as your placement is low and you have enough air coming through.
Even through to a degree. So the words that are standing out a lot to me are low, air, and through. Because those through to a lesser degree, but the big ones are especially going to be low and air. Just to me, I feel like a little bit more vowel shifting than I would like to hear personally. Other thoughts on that first section? I'll play again.
I mean,
I like that part. I think that's a common build up to whatever comes next. I mean, and then kind of you could probably even lower the pitch if you wanted.
I mean, as long as your placement is low and you have enough air coming through.
Also like that. And you have enough that, again, that progression downward, I think, is a good movement. Other thoughts for that first half?
Can you play that part one more time?
I mean, as long as your placement is low and you have enough air coming through.
Okay, as long as your placement is low. I probably wouldn't pause it after your, but he might have paused because he was trying to focus on his pronunciation. Like I would like keep going right there and rush through your and then stress placement. Like as long as your placement is low. Instead of as long as your placement is low, like that.
Yeah, that's interesting what you're doing also with pitch. So you're actually going a lot lower. As long as your placement is low, like things like that, or as long as your placement is low. But again, playing around with some of those lower pitches as opposed to the higher ones, that definitely be something I would say experiment with.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as your placement is low and you have enough air coming through.
So it's almost kind of treating it like a list. As long as you do this and this, But you could also experiment with the cone in the opposite direction, like lower. Like as long as your placement is low and you have enough air coming through, that's another alternative that you'll hear. I'm gonna take a look at the second half.
Mouth position really doesn't matter if you think about it.
Play that second half again.
Through. Mouth position really doesn't matter if you think about it.
Things standing out to you there.
Okay, yeah. So the word you seems like it could be articulated a little bit more. It doesn't have to be particularly stressed, but it seems like it's being reduced a little bit more than we would reduce it.
For there really doesn't matter if you think about that part.
Mhm.
Mouth position really doesn't matter if you think about it.
If you think about it.
If you think about
Yeah. Like I'm hearing more yeah,
Mhm,
and we would probably go
Um,
more
mouth
you if you think about it.
mhm.
really doesn't matter if you think about it.
If you think about it.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's always tricky with reductions. There's always a million ways to do it. One alternative could be holding it longer. I could see that. I wouldn't want to reduce it any more than you currently have it reduced. Okay, so if you're going for the reduction, this is probably the most you'd want to do.
Mouth doesn't matter if you think about it.
If you think about it, to me that part feels a little choppier.
Really doesn't matter if you think about it.
If you think about it versus if you think about it. I think you could experiment with potentially even going lower. Like if you think about it, it doesn't matter if you think about it. Like it really doesn't matter if you think about it. So Mary, really quick, I'd like to get to know a little bit more about kind of just the different services you offer. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do specifically with students?
Yeah, so I work with advanced English speakers who really just want to work on their accent and either Americanizing it or neutralizing it so people can't tell where they're from. Some people say, okay, I don't want to completely get rid of my accent. I just don't want people to always ask me where I'm from. And then there are other people that really want an American accent. So I help people with both. And we do one on one coaching sessions where I have them speak. We work on one sound per session and just making sure they always pronounce it a certain way as they speak. Yeah, so I've been teaching formally for about 4 years, and I've also been tutoring for longer than that, and it's been really fun. I love working with people from other countries and helping them with their language skills.
Yeah. Now, is there a difference between the accent coaching and then the consultations that you do?
Yeah, so the consultations are really just like to get to know a person, like what are their goals, and to explain what I can offer them. That way we know like if we're a good fit for each other, because not everyone is going to be like a good fit. Maybe I don't offer what they're looking for. So that's really just to get to know if it's the right fit.
Got you. Got you. So again, guys, be sure to check that out. We do have another question here from Mr. Go Big Go Home. Good to see you as always. Difference between college and university, of course.
Mhm. I get
Anything that
this
comes to mind, Mary? Yes.
Okay. I would say to me, first of all, college is the most common term, in my opinion, that you're going to hear from an American. It's very, very general and it kind of refers to everything. I wouldn't say that every college is a university, though.
Yeah. Yeah, like if you go to the US, as soon as you finish high school, you go to college. Okay. I
Yeah.
know, for instance, for some of our people, a lot of Slavic speaking countries, college and university, there is a big difference between them. But in North America, you don't say, "Oh, I go to university." No, you
Mhm.
say, I go to college," or "I'm in college." There are technical differences. I want to say universities have, I want to say it's like the ratio of like PhDs to master holding faculty in addition to research funding. So like in general, university is going to be bigger. University is going to be bigger than a college for the most part. So like if you're doing anything that's a lot more like research based, um, universities tend to have greater opportunities just because they have greater funding. But in terms of the degree you get the same degree from both. Yeah. But yeah, North America definitely, or at least for US, can't speak for Canada, but college is definitely more frequent. You sound a little weird, like, "Oh, I go to university." Like, "Oh, you're fancy, huh? Oh, you go to university, you fancy." Um,
Yeah,
things
I
like
think the same thing is
yeah,
if someone says that, I'm going to know they're from somewhere else for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. That's definitely one giveaway. Yeah, you're trying to sound American, um, things like that.
Mhm.
A quick note. Oh, this is guys, the University of Faculty. Be careful because that's kind of sounds like a time of like facultad. So like the closest thing in English would probably be like your department, because if you say faculty, faculty means like the staff, like the teaching
Mhm.
staff.
Right.
So just kind of be careful with that. Like if you say my faculty is, English, people are like, wait, what? It's like all the teachers are from England. That's what people think. Um, all right, let's take a look at another file. I want to share my screen once more.
While world rather major mayor range, brains, lock, cup, bot, full, pull, look, low, law, boat, bought, coat, caught, woke, walk, axe, taxes, Texas, sale.
Okay, thanks, Isabella, for sending us. So kind of just a lot of minimal pairs and things. Let's go back to the beginning a little bit.
Wild world, rather,
Let's kind of just start off with those.
wild world,
In general, anything standing out to you, Mary, about like wild and world?
World. Can you play it one more time?
wild world,
World.
World is standing out to me more than wild.
Yeah.
wild world,
World. World.
For me, what I'm hearing is
wild world,
world. It sounds to me like the placement's a little high and our breath's a little blocked off. Like it kind of feels like that's kind of the dark L sound we're getting versus like an It's like world. I'd be trying to get a little bit more air through because it does sound a little bit closed off.
Right.
Yeah. Other things kind of standing out to you from those two?
No, because her pronunciation is definitely correct, but I noticed the same thing that you said. Like it sounds a little bit, I want to say nasal because I don't hear that there's a lot of space and that it's relaxed. It's kind of tight. But the pronunciation's very good.
Keep going a little bit. Hello also to Unknown. Thanks for stopping by.
wild world, rather, major, mayor, range,
Play that little part again, see if anything stands out to you.
rather, major, mayor,
Anything there?
I would make them j and major a little bit stronger.
rather, major, mayor,
It reminds me a little bit of how some Spanish speakers pronounce the Y, where it would be like major, rather than jur, where it's like it's stronger.
Okay.
And that's what's standing out to me right there.
Gotcha.
rather, major, mayor,
For me, the thing that's standing out are for I feel like I'm hearing rather versus like rather.
Yeah.
So one of the things, so rather your stress is in that first syllable. That second syllable I would maybe weaken a little bit, like rather. Also, same thing with what's the last one? Mayor.
rather, major, mayor,
Mayor versus mayor. Mayor. I think a lot of times, if in general, when you hear people pronouncing that second syllable again, it's gonna be super weak, super fast, like mayor. Gonna keep going.
range, brains,
Up there on range and reigns.
major, mayor, range, brains,
Rains sounds, the R in rains sounds a little bit closer to a W to me.
mayor, range, brains,
Reigns. I'm wondering if there's a lot of lip movement when they're doing that. Like wanes versus rains. You could keep the lips straighter. I would also say check yourself in the mirror when you're saying rains. If you see if your lips are rounding, because that can lead to that W type sound.
Right.
That Z is also a little bit exaggerated. I appreciate having a voice final sound. It's always good to hear. It doesn't have to be that strong. It doesn't have to be rains. It could be just like rains.
I'm curious, how do you explain the initial R to people? Like, do you tell them to round their lips in general?
So, good question. I mean, let's discuss. I would like to have your thoughts on this too. In general, my stance on a lot of consonant sounds are, I think there are multiple ways to do it, and I don't think, for like a lot of consonants, like for instance, like with TH, people are like, oh, have contact, with your tooth. For W, round lips and things like that. And I definitely think you can pronounce the sounds that way. But I also think that you can get a sound that is equally as clear with what would be considered kind of like quote unquote like non-standard or incorrect mouth positions, and I think this is largely due to concepts like placement, like where are you projecting the sound from, and also things again like breath, like how much air do you have passing through, because so many other languages are so much more closed. So for instance, if I'm teaching like an R, like the goal a lot of times, like when I'm working with a student, we focus on the sound first. Like I'm like not even watching what you're doing here. Let's just kind of want to hear what you're doing. Just see if we can get like an sound, or like because if you can do an then we can hold it and then get into like a sound. So for instance, like So in general, obviously you can, you can do like or you can do or like when in general what I find is that straighter lips make it a little bit easier to get more breath through.
Mhm.
Dropping the lower jaw also can allow that a little bit more too. So like and also just kind of repeating the sound a couple times can help try to kind of weaken it because in my opinion, like American English is so focused on vowel sounds and trying to get from vowel to vowel. So
Yes.
the consonants, oftentimes we want them to become relatively weak, especially compared to other languages. So like, for instance, if you're trying to say a word like, for instance, like raw, like the key is the ah sound. It's not really the R. So it's like ah, raw. Because otherwise, if you're focusing rely on the R, what you can end up getting is like a raw. But people aren't saying raw, conversation, people are saying raw. It's like ah, raw, ah, raw, ah, raw. The R is present but not dominant.
Mhm.
How about for yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say this the exact same thing as you. I have a client from Italy who exaggerates the R,
Mhm.
and she doesn't have the wrong placement. Like she makes an American R, absolutely, but she
Mhm.
does try to round her lips a lot because that's what they taught her
Mhm.
in English classes.
Right.
But I tell her like when she does that, she gets like read, and it sounds
Exactly.
a little bit strong.
Mhm.
And I know in Italian consonants are very strong, like they have double
Double
consonants.
consonants are yeah.
Yeah. So, it's a really big difference and she wants to sound American. So I tell her like not to round her lips at all. And
Mhm.
I have her kind of I actually have her like lightly touch the back of her bottom lip with her upper
Uh-huh.
teeth.
Mhm.
And I find that that gets her to
Interesting.
sound
Mhm.
immediately.
Mhm. I can see that helping with trying to keep the lips straighter because it's hard to do that with round lips. I could see that working.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, yeah, Italian is so consonant. I mean, double consonants. I mean, there's still times in like minimal pairs with like double consonants. I need to take a second and be like, oh, that was a double and that was a single. Especially if I'm tired. Um, and this is true for a lot of Romance languages. So like just trying to cut off or not cut off, but like really weaken the vowels. Like even if you have a sentence like if I say a sentence like, like Ralph rarely rows, like saying sentence like that, you don't want like Ralph rarely rows, because then those R's just, but if you focus instead on the vowels, like Ralph rarely rows, like Al, air, oh, Ralph rarely rows, suddenly you're able to open things up and allow a little bit more air to pass through and things like that. Um,
Yeah,
honestly,
that's a great point. Yeah, I would definitely agree with you on that. Like consonants in general are not that strong in American English.
yeah, yeah. Another question here.
What's up?
Sometimes in songs like Living on a Prayer here at the end, Living on a Prayer. What's the mystery of that? It's like, do you feel like this is for unknown? So I imagine you feel like you're hearing like living on a prayer, like living aura instead of Anna. Um, this kind of actually goes back to what I was just mentioning. The traditional way that people are taught R sounds in school is that a very strong R. People are like American English R sound really strong. When the reality is it's present but not dominant. It's stronger than British English, but like that's not really a fair comparison.
Mm,
So I'm kind of same, very similar thing with the N sound. Traditionally, I feel like the N is taught, tip of the tongue on your ridge and like a n. But I think, a lot of words, prepositions have the N sounds, and typically prepositions are not stressed. It's like, it's not living on a, it's living and in prayer. If in terms of the title, those will be your stresses. It's like that Anna part. We're trying to like breeze past that. We're trying to get to prayer in general as fast as we can. And if you're doing that higher position, it's not going to work, because it's not living on a prayer. It's living on a prayer. It's like the Anna. A lot of times you don't even really need to have the tip of your tongue touch up here. You can kind of just get through a click. Like Anna very often becomes like Anna, which
mhm,
is not, however, the same thing as an R sound.
mhm,
So it's because the back of the tongue is just not that other half of your tongue is just not going high enough.
mhm,
So I'm guessing that's what you're hearing with that Anna versus Ara or like Aura. 'Cause it's not Aura prayer, it's Anna prayer. Anna. So I would say try saying Anna like 3 times with the tip of your tongue down, just kind of see how it sounds like Anna.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe it can sound like an R for the reason that you stated before, that we actually don't exaggerate our R's that much. I mean, it depends. If you're from the
Mhm.
South, maybe. But in general, in a general American accent, the R's are not that stressed. So maybe it can end up sounding like that for that reason.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I would say continue listening to reductions and things. Um, going back to our audio though, I'm gonna keep moving ahead.
Range, rains,
We talked about that Z a little exaggerated on that Z on rains.
lock, lock,
So this is luck, I believe.
Mm.
lock, lock,
Sound a little similar.
Yeah, they sound pretty similar. The first time they sounded like the same word to me. When I listen again, I can
Mhm.
tell the first one's ah. But I think to make it clearer, she could drop her jaw more, make it longer of a sound.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
lock, lock,
Look. Yeah, it does feel very closed off on that. Luck. Again, this is so for your
Mhm.
schwa sound, just some general tips. That's the sound you're making when your face is usually in like a neutral position, so not really smiling. Your teeth aren't really touching. Maybe your tongue's a little high, not touching the top of the mouth, but just slightly raised. And again, trying to project from a lower position, like So let's make sure you can hear the difference between like an uh, ah, ah, uh. And then what you can do is you can then add a little bit to that. So like la, lock, luck, and things
Mhm.
like that. Kind of build on your progression there. But they sound a little similar. I'm gonna keep going.
cup, cup,
Now that vowel is very short on cut.
cup, cup,
Yeah. One thing again, vowel sounds in American English, there are names, for instance, like a long vowel versus a short vowel, but in a lot of ways, it don't really mean anything because you can hold any vowel for the same amount of time. Just because something's considered a short vowel does not mean it's fast. Just because
Mhm.
something is long doesn't necessarily mean it's long. They're just names. So in general, every vowel in American English you can pronounce for the same amount of time. So like for instance, when you're saying cop and cup, there's no reason I can't say those words for the same amount of time. Cop, cup, cop, cup. So I do think that vowel in cup is a little bit fast because you're kind of getting cup, versus cup,
lock, lock, cup, cup,
cup. Just super
Mm.
fast. Consonants kind of standing. Yeah.
Maybe it's because like I'm not sure what her native language is for sure, but I noticed like Spanish and Italian speakers start out saying like cat instead of cut. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
she's trying so hard not to open it too much that it's getting too
Mm-hmm.
closed.
Yeah, there could be a lot of overcompensating. That's interesting because I know that there are some similarities. So she speaks Farsi. There are some similarities between Spanish and Farsi. I'm gonna keep going.
cup, bot, full, full,
Let's put it again.
full, full,
So for full and fool, things are standing out to you there.
Hmm. Full. Yeah. When she says full, it feels like full, very tight.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
She could maybe like relax the tongue a little bit, like full.
Mm-hmm.
full,
That's for fool.
full, full,
Ooh.
Okay.
She does the ooh really well.
I was gonna say I can clearly hear the difference between these. These don't sound exactly the same, which is good.
Yeah.
I would not be opposed to more breath coming through for both of them, but I can hear a difference between them, which is good.
full, full,
They both do sound tight, like full, fool versus like fa, fool. So I would say, hey, can we get to try to feel your diaphragm a little bit more? Try to get a little bit more air passing through. Also for the dark L, the placement for the L seems a little high to me.
full,
Fool versus all at the end. Fool. So like all, just a little more air. I'm gonna keep moving.
pull, pull,
That pull and pool to me sounded a little bit more open than full and fool. I don't know if you had that impression too. I'll play again.
pull, pull, look,
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, pull sounded more open for sure.
That one time.
full, pull, pull,
Yeah, I thought both of those sounded more open. Pull and pool.
Yeah.
A lot more breath through.
look, look,
Uh-oh. I think we have a British invasion, I think. Let me hear that again, Luke.
pull, look, look,
Oh yeah.
Hear
Yeah.
that? So yeah, a little bit of kind of like some British influence on that oo sound after, again, one difference between British and American English. Oo sounds after consonants. British English sometimes adding like an ew type sound versus just American English will go right to the oo. So say Luke or just Luke.
Mm.
look, look,
I do like look. I thought look sounded pretty good to me.
Mm.
Again, I can hear clearly the difference between those, which is great.
low, law, boat, bought, coat, caught,
Any thoughts on these O and aw sounds?
Can you play that part one more time?
low, law, boat, bought, coat, caught,
Caught. Yeah, I think she could lower her placement a little bit, but I do hear a pretty big difference between the two
Yep.
sounds, so that's
Yep.
excellent.
bought, coat, caught,
Caught. It does feel like the placement kind of shifts. Like it feels like I thought this for bought and I thought this for caught. Like it feels like we're starting a little higher and then opening down. It's like
Mhm.
caught, bought versus caught, bought.
Mhm.
We wonder if we could start with the placement a little lower for both.
low, law, boat, bought,
Yeah, boat versus boat.
coat, caught,
Caught versus caught. It feels like our vowels kind of shifting slightly to me. Get to the last part of this.
wolf, walk, axe, X,
Thoughts on the A versus the S sound here?
Can you play it one more time?
Yep.
X, Texas, Texas.
X sounded a little bit more closed. I would probably open it up just a little bit.
X,
X, right? Versus X.
Right.
Yeah. I would try saying X like 3 times, like X. And again, key thing with this one, letters, I mean, it's pretty much just the letter X, a lot of letters actually start with the sound. We see this in S, we see this in F, we see this in O, we see this in M. So like it might be helpful to just kind of say them a couple times to make sure you're getting the right sound. Like for instance, like M. It's not M. It's M. Just trying to again open things up. Same thing with X.
Yeah, I feel like with all vowels in American English, you don't want that much tightness. Like you want to have them all kind of open, probably more than in your native language.
Yeah.
So it would be a good idea to kind of just open it up a little bit.
Yeah. The last part's here.
Texas. So, sail.
This kind of stands out, right? Hang on.
Sail.
Say placement's pretty high. You're getting a lot of vibration, like say versus say. I'll say lowered placement a little bit for that A sound. I did like sell. I thought sell was pretty good.
Yeah.
Other last thoughts for this file?
No, I think that's it.
Cool. So Beta, thank you for sending us this. We do appreciate it. I'm going to make myself big just for a moment. Guys, so again, if you're enjoying the sorts of feedback that we are going through today, just quick note, that doesn't even mean anything. Just to let you know really quick, we do have a program called Mission English where Monday through Friday at these times, which I will show you as soon as I can find it, we do a 30-minute live stream. Basically, you can join me in a private Facebook group and we look at your pronunciation files. So we can go a little bit more in depth than we can today because we can do exercises together. You can join me on camera and join us in the group. And again, 30 minutes. We have 2 sessions per day, Monday through Friday. And they're also spread out across different time zones. So for instance, if that 1:30 time slot is great for you, we meet on Monday, we meet on Tuesday, and we meet again on Friday. Maybe that 8 p.m. New York time works out well for you, though. Well, we do that on Monday, we do that on Wednesday, and we do that on Thursday. So again, this is all part of our Mission English program. We would love to have you and get working on your American English every single day of the week. But in the meantime, we'll have some more pronunciation files to get through. Mary, how are you feeling so far?
This is fun.
Yeah, this is why you need to live stream. Yeah, Mary needs to live stream. Don't you agree? Yeah, we need to live stream.
Yeah, I need to learn to do more technically advanced things related to pronunciation. For me, it's like I'm
talk to us after.
Videos, but this is different.
It is different. Yeah, definitely different.
You have the perfect voice for it. Like you're so exciting to listen to.
Oh, that's so awesome. Oh, shucks. Thanks, Mary. You're the best.
A winter in the Gulf.
I feel like we are so open on everything, which is great. I love open.
A winter in the Gulf.
You can really hear. I really like that R sound on winter. I think that's coming in super clearly.
A winter in the Gulf.
There's one word though that is really closing off, and that's the word golf. Golf. It feels like we're almost swallowing it.
Winter in the Gulf.
Golf versus golf. I'll just try to keep that same level of openness that you have for that first part, for that part too. And I know you can because you kept everything open for all the other parts. So I know you can do it on that part as well. Don't let that L cause problems. It's just there. Don't let it dominate. I'm gonna keep going unless Mary, anything stand out to you so far?
Yeah. When she says least, I would tighten it a little bit.
Let's hear that again.
Winter in the Gulf, unlike any other, at least in recent.
At least. Like
really,
I would bring
that
it
plays switch. I'm sorry. Yeah.
At least.
Also, the A and at. Can you play that part one more time?
Unlike any other, at least.
At least. It seems like the as sound is a little bit forced, even though she's trying to rush through the word. So rushing through it is good, but I would use a different pronunciation while rushing through it, almost like an it, as in sit, like at least.
Actually,
unlike any other, at least.
It is very strong. I would definitely consider trying to find a way to weaken it a little bit. At least.
Unlike any other, at least.
At least. One of the other things too is that something with held sound. So you're using a held sound. You're not pronouncing the T. You're not saying at least, which is, I guess, something I would recommend as well. But I think the tricky thing with held sounds is, yes, we're not going to pronounce the T, but at the same time, And it sounds kind of counterintuitive. Like I would say that with health sounds, we're not entirely stopping the breath because the breath kind of needs to link to the next part. So you're not going to get that, but it's not going to be at least. It's not like a glottal, like complete stop. It's still going to be slightly smoother. So like at least, at least, at least. It's at least versus like at least. It's just trying to smooth that out a little bit. And I'm wondering if that would also kind of soften that consonant a little bit more, like you were describing. I'm going to keep going.
Sure.
At least in recent memory.
I hear recent memory.
At least in recent memory.
Recent mem. I'm wondering if recent is impacting the vowel on memory. It's like recent mem versus recent mem. Recent memory.
In recent memory.
Memory. You're at memory versus memory. Memory. So I would try to keep that placement a little lower.
Least in recent memory.
Yeah, I would recommend using a schwa sound. So I hear a lot of people say it's just but I sometimes favor kind of an sound for a schwa, not a stressed like fish, like where it's super stressed, but to go a little bit more in that direction, like at least instead of at least. If you go really then it can sound a little strange.
Okay. So yeah, at least. Yeah, I think you can get away with that. Play a little more.
Since January 1st.
Since January kind of pops out nowhere.
Since January.
Since January. Oh my gosh! Like well, so I would just kind of tone down that transition to January just slightly.
January 1st.
I do like first. First sounds good. I like your R's in general. Like I think the R's, lots of breath coming through, but not dominant, which I like.
More than a year's worth of rain has.
Some consistent things I'm seeing with the E sound. We saw this in recent memory, where I mentioned again memory, that mem sounded like it was kind of influenced by how you're doing that E sound on recent. Same thing here with like years. I just think your E sounds tend to be a little high in terms of the placement, which is kind of really restricting things. So you're ending up with it's like an E sound, E, versus like an E. And this is one of those tricky things because if you say E, people will understand it because English doesn't have any other vowel sound that's close to that. So people will hear an E, but it's one of those things, the difference between, yeah, it's understandable, but is it natural sounding? And I think that it's always going to sound slightly accented when you do it that way. Let me play again, a year's worth.
More than a year's.
A year's, you can hear the build up to it too, where everything tightens. A year's versus a year's. Try to keep everything where it was for that sound, and I think you'll be in good shape. Things standing out to you right now, Mary?
No.
Okay.
More than a year's worth of rain.
Just a quick note. I like that Z sound on years. It's not overpowering. This is kind of we talked about the Z sound. I think it was on rains earlier, and I think this is a Z sound. You can hear the voice sound, but it's not too much.
Worth of rain has fallen on Qatar's capital, Doha.
I think we kind of like forgot like the gap between Qatar's capital. Like I think we like Qatar's capital. Like I think we like almost like forgot a word or something. And then kind of jumped in. So I won't punish you for that. Things that are standing out from this last part.
Year's worth of rain has fallen on Qatar's capital, Doha.
Capital. I would slow down a little bit on the in capital instead of capital. Like capital, just lightly slow down a little bit.
That's very good.
Has fallen on Qatar's capital.
I'm wondering if I hear what you're saying. I'm wondering if it's because the consonants are so strong, because that k sound is really heavy and that p sound's really heavy, which is making that vowel sound shorter than I think it actually is. So instead of saying like just saying like cap, like I was just saying cap, it's like cap. Can you hear that like difference there? Trying to let the vowel be the center stage, let that get the attention, not the consonants there. It's like
Right.
capital, yeah, very heavy on the consonants. This one sounds painful.
He was taken to hospital with broken legs, a shattered jaw, severed fingers, and a fractured skull.
Oh my God.
Oh.
All right. This is just
I hope
tragic. Oh my gosh.
an example sentence.
Praying this is just a sentence. But this is what we're choosing to say, so let's say it as naturally as possible. Quick American English versus British English thing here. North America will be the hospital versus to hospital. That's more British. Just a note. But besides that,
he was taken to hospital with broken legs.
Not that part. Play it again.
He was taken to hospital with broken legs, a shattered.
I got fixated on shattered. I'm sorry.
Okay. I went too far.
He was taken to hospital with broken legs.
I think there's one word that's kind of standing out to me. Let's see if it's
broken. One more time.
See if the same word is standing out to you.
He He was taken to hospital with broken legs.
Broken. Maybe broken. I would rush through that E a little more. Broken.
Hospital with broken legs.
Broken.
For me, the word that's really standing out that feels different than all the others is the word legs.
He was taken to hospital with broken legs.
Because for me, the placement there is just so different. Everything else, the placement feels really low for me, but then on legs, it kind of feels like it jumps up.
He was taken to hospital with broken legs.
Taken to hospital with broken legs, legs versus legs, legs with broken legs. It's just that's the word that's standing out to me. I would say that sound. I would try to get a little more breath through. Try to feel the diaphragm more.
He was taken to hospital with broken legs.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I hear it a little bit. It's not too much, but yeah, I would put a little more breath, like you're saying.
Other things. Get the shattered
legs, a shattered jaw.
Okay, right there, I would open up more for shatter and make it last a little bit longer. Stress it a little more.
Shattered jaw.
Like, okay, shattered jaw. I would go like shattered jaw, like really open up on that one.
Yes, a shattered jaw. He was taken to hospital with broken legs, a shattered jaw.
Yeah, it sounds just a little bit too close to F for me.
Like shattered versus shattered kind of thing.
Exactly.
To hospital with broken legs, a shattered jaw.
To me, the pitch is a little funky.
He was taken to hospital with broken legs, a shattered jaw.
Shattered.
Broken legs,
Opening
shattered
back
jaw.
Shattered.
Like a shattered jaw. Let me hear the rest of it.
A shattered jaw, severed fingers.
Severed. Try to make that V maybe just a touch stronger. Severed, like severed fingers.
Severed fingers.
Because I'm here, sure versus like severed. Could also be just that S sound again, which you saw. So it seems like maybe like ass sounds versus like S sounds a little bit might be some good vowels to take a look at. We see this on shattered, we see this on legs, we see this on severed.
Right.
Severed fingers and a fractured skull.
Oh yeah, also on fractured, I would open up more.
Fractured skull. A shattered jaw, severed fingers and a fractured skull.
Fractured.
Fingers and a fractured skull.
Yeah. So yeah, might be good to look at like S sounds just a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, it was excellent. The placement sounded really good too.
I would definitely encourage, because I don't think it sounds flat, but I would definitely, we don't have a whole lot of energy here.
He was taken to hospital with broken legs, a shattered jaw, severed fingers, and a fractured skull.
It's just like a laundry list. But like, I don't know how to feel about these things. Like, am I like surprised? Am I like sad? Am I just like shocked? Am I angry? Like, there's really no emotional context. Not that there needs to be, but those things would also have an impact on the words we stress. It would have an impact on pitch, because right now we're just staying super flat and super neutral. You know, so I would, kind of decide on an emotion, and also then play around with how high we go and how low we go. Because right now we're kind of using like a range of maybe like 3 to 4 pitches. When this could easily get into like 6, 7, 8 pitch range. Like he was taking a hospital with broken legs, shattered jaw, like severed fingers. Like, you could really play around with this a lot more to kind of extend the range.
He could even, if he wanted to make it really exciting, he could even stress broken, shattered, and severed more, because those are huge, those are huge things. They carry a lot of meaning, like broken legs, a shattered jaw, really opening up on everything.
Yeah. So it's such an interesting, I mean, horrifying, but also interesting sentence that there's a lot you could kind of play with here, honestly.
I agree.